Thank you. It's always fun, right?
You see how many people were at that funeral yesterday?
Couldn't park anywhere.
He was
Had to park
well
on the
loved
street.
by everybody.
He was a Santa Claus.
I saw him just
He
a
was
couple of
Santa
weeks
Claus.
before.
He
I
was,
talked to
he
him
was
just.
the town Santa Claus.
A friend of mine
Yeah.
posted all these pictures of her son, all the, he's like 3 or something, with like
Yeah.
each one.
Yeah, he was Santa Claus.
All right, so I'm gonna, who in the world is in that voicemail? All right, I gotta hit it. All right, so he said, what I'm gonna ask you all, I would like to move forward with approval of the agenda, the revised personnel report and removal of engaging schools, item number 18.
And I plan on requesting pulling from consent the grant, so we can.
The teacher's grant.
We have to say.
No, he said he was gonna say, the attorney said he was gonna, because I don't want to mess with the teacher.
I don't either.
So the attorney said that he would say he would handle the legalese, and he said he would add something to that.
But how do we make it? Okay.
Yeah, oh, that's what he
I
said.
just don't want a line item. I don't want to have to line item each one.
Oh, no.
Because
Oh, no.
I'm very important.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to
And-
make sure.
because you know, yeah, I think we'll put it on the next policy, because I would never, ever want a teacher grant.
No.
Anyway, 'cause
We
I
don't want to
it's
hit it.
more, I think it's more, it's more like we're losing more money than it's giving, but still, I
No,
wouldn't say
but
that to a
it's
teacher.
the enablement of it,
Yeah.
of what she's trying to
Yeah.
do. But I mean, and if you read what she submitted, you actually saw the note that she didn't get it the first time.
And see, gosh, that would be, okay, that's another reason I don't want to.
So Hillary, you're okay with doing the camera stuff in the policy committee?
So we can talk about it. Yeah, it's with that gown girl.
I'm good.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
good. Holler. Because we don't want the teacher, I mean, you know, of all people. You feel.
Recognitions.
Okay, good. So, the attorney says, what, if we're not, I'm not gonna read that part then. It's 7 o'clock. Ooh.
So, Kristen,
You are. I don't have any notes.
What, the attorney?
the CT. It
Hey, will
says
you give
Patrick.
me, Patrick, you said you had those paper copies. All right, wait a minute, maybe I can keep up with this or not.
That's all right. I got a cheat sheet. Which one
Thank
is it?
you. All right, I am calling, because look what time it is. It is now 7:04, and I'm calling the regular business meeting of the Orange County Board of Education to order. And now I will read the public charge. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy toward both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain that they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruption of the meeting. And now we will observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Well, before I start calling on you, do you want to say something to the, I used to say Mr. Superintendent, so you're
All
going
right.
to
So
let everybody know.
I'm Patrick Obley, Chief Operations Officer, filling in tonight for our superintendent, who is out with an unexpected illness. So we do wish him well, and just wanted you to know why I'm sitting here this evening.
All right. Do we have any recognitions,
No
Patrick?
recognitions.
All right, so we'll just, oh, you see why I don't like this? We'll move down. So I would like to move forward with the agenda if we would consider a revised personnel report and removing the engaging schools item number 18, if I could get a second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, ladies and
Aye.
gentlemen, say
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. So now, the first item,
Public comments.
public comment, and we don't have
No.
anyone, listed for public comment, so I will not read the public charge. I can't see my
Board
stuff.
reports and comments.
Board reports, I'm gonna start Dr. H.
Oh, just a couple of quick comments. The work of the Student Achievement Committee
Okay.
last week, I thought was extremely interesting. Mr. Roberts was there and Ms. Smiley came, and I was there, and it was, well done. And I think that's the kind of work that we can accomplish in these committees that we just can't accomplish during a regular board meeting. And also, I wanted to commend the Policy Committee with Hillary and Sarah, and I attended that also as a non-voting member of the committee. And the work that was done there was equally as important. And it takes that kind of work behind the scenes to get this stuff done
That's right.
in order to have a smooth running organization. So I just wanted to say thank you to the staffs that put all of that stuff together so that the school board can actually move ahead in meeting the needs of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKnight?
Well, I'd like to just say that I'm sorry that I missed the board meeting last week as well as the student achievement meeting. But I was sort of incapacitated in regards to not having a phone. And plus, I was out of the state for the last 5 days, so, if it caused any problems, then I'm sorry. You know, I was celebrating my 20th year anniversary.
Well, no problems here. So I will ask publicly, while you, in your absence, I took the liberty of assigning you to a committee.
That's fine.
All right, so that's, all right, if you're fine with it, all right, we'll move forward. Okay, Will?
Just a few items. First, attended the Fall Law Conference with Minnie here. Was an excellent education session. A lot of items that never considered, realized we have a lot to look at, especially with the ever-changing world we're in. Second, attended the Principal of the Year. Was put on excellently, greatly appreciated, and very nice to be able to attend that. The last item is the CTE committee. Met very quickly, was able to get items together that we'll be reviewing today, so that's all I had.
Mr. Roberts?
Also attended the Student Achievement Committee, and one thing that came out of it that I've been pushing for since I've been on the board.
All
One of our middle schools actually has a program targeted in the classroom for our students who are underperforming. It's very specifically designed for them, and I'm impressed that you've got a group of staff that's saying, hey, we've got students that are behind in the middle school, we're designing a program for them, and they're going pretty aggressive at it. And I'm hoping that we can start seeing the same thing at our elementary schools. Even though it's on the consent agenda, the school calendar,
right.
Another one that's positive.
It sure
actually
is.
Another issue that was dear to my heart. No early release dates.
That's right.
And that's, in my mind, that's a great benefit to the parents and the students. So I'm glad to hear that we finally figured out how to do that. And I also participated in continuing education, although I was there as an alternate.
I was going to thank you for, I
Thank
said,
you,
you know,
Matthew.
because we said, you know, in the event that he cannot serve, will you fill in? And he did fill in, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Matthew. Hillary, you have anything?
Yes. I also attended the Fall Law Conference with Mr. Atherton and Ms. Smiley and Mr. Oblate and Superintendent Work. And I just want to echo what Will said, that it was a really positive experience and covered some great topics. This past Saturday, I traveled to Wendell, North Carolina to attend the Safe Schools North Carolina Conference with Ms. Smiley. And it's designed to help all stakeholders in K-12 schools create safe and inclusive spaces for everyone, especially LGBTQ+ students and families. And I just want to say to the Orange County students who identify as LGBTQ and their families that I see you and I stand with you.
Thank you. Sarah.
All right. So It's been a while since our last report out, so in the middle of October, Ms. Stevens and I went to our first collaboration
That's
meeting with the chairs and vice chairs of the county commissioners and the Chapel Hill School District. It was also Andy Sack's last meeting because he retired. And so
It is
I hear
sad.
he was with that for a lot. I really,
That's right. It's
From the
sad.
beginning.
yeah.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a sad time.
Yeah, so we had a good discussion there, and Mr. Apley and Dr. Ware were there as well. Also went to the school law conference. I was glad that the topics were around school safety and student discipline. Went to the principal and vice principal of the year celebration. I went to the Safe Schools conference, which was great.
That's awesome.
After lunch, they had a student panel where they had students who identify as LGBTQ+, just sort of speaking, high school students speaking about their experience in schools, the sort of ups and downs of that, and the place that their teachers played in their lives and things like that. It was really powerful and made me really hopeful about the next generation of kids in this country. These kids were really very impressive. And there were some topics about law and policy related to LGBTQ groups, which felt relevant. Went to Boomerang's presentation of the talk and a panel discussion afterwards, which was also really great. And then Student Achievement Committee and Policy Committee as well. And the Student Achievement Committee, both presentations I thought were things that would be really great for the whole board to experience. It really went in depth with the MTSS process at Gravelly Hill. They're doing some like really impressive, thoughtful things there, as Mr. Roberts said. And then the work that is going to be done on our code of conduct, which I think is going to be really fantastic. So,
Great, thank you, thank you. So, my report is brief. Our Orange High School student Milosh McAdoo will be a part of a 5-member panel of high school students next week during our 2018 NCSBA conference. Thank you for the recommendation,
You're welcome.
Dr. H. He consented to do it, and I wanted to announce it here so that those of you that show up in the assembly and see an Orange High School student on stage talking, you'd wonder, why didn't she say anything? So I'm sharing that. I think the communications person cleared that with Milosh and his family last week. I attended the Principal Assistant Principal of the Year, and it was done differently this year, and I thank our HR department for a job well done. And congratulations to Mr. Yarborough and Ms. Williamson on being selected in those 2 positions. And I wanted to also remind everyone, maybe Patrick was going to say it, but the State of the Schools is going to be 6 to 8 at Cedar Ridge on Thursday. So please remember that, everyone. It's a different time, but this way it'll enable working parents or other people to attend, because when we had it during the day, it was just for people who were, didn't work. So hopefully this will be more convenient for everyone. All right, that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
So for the superintendent, I do not have any reports this evening, but I do have a couple just comments to make to the board and publicly. There have been several tragic incidents around the country the past couple weeks involving school buses or students at bus stops, and we would just advocate and just ask the public to please use caution and safety when traveling. Be very attentive of both school buses and students at bus stops. We know certainly dangers can exist, but we want to keep our students very safe and our families safe and our buses safe while operating on the roads, and especially the time with the time change and the changes in the hours, and certainly it's going to be darker much sooner, and we're going to see the same thing in the morning hours as well. But just please use additional caution. We do not want any incidents like that, certainly for anyone, not just in our county, but we just don't ever want to have to deal with things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
Can I make a comment on that? I was kind of intrigued by the fact that according to national news media, there are 85,000 incidents each day of people passing stopped school buses that are displaying all of the appropriate paraphernalia with signs and lights and everything else. 85,000. I don't recall seeing anybody reported in the police reports that we used to see in the News of Orange in the old days of having been guilty of violating the law with respect to passing a stopped school bus. I think that violation still carries with it the maximum number of points, I believe, of any motor vehicle violations. And the horrific incident where the 3 children from one family were wiped out. I would like the board to consider somewhere down the road sending a resolution to the judges and the district attorney of our firm commitment in school bus safety and the laws of the state of North Carolina to be vigorously enforced against people who blatantly violate that law.
Thank you, and I see that our 2 individuals are documenting that. One more, all right.
Just a reminder to all the families that Monday, November 12th is Veterans Day. Schools will be closed that day in honor of Veterans Day. And we do want to say thank you to not only our employees, but members of the community who are currently serving or have served our country. So thank you, and we will be closed on Monday, November 12th.
Thank you for your service, Brendan.
And thank you for your service, Tony. All right, so, thank you for your service. All right, so, can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
I want to pull one item for discussion, please.
All right,
Item H, Enterprise Funds Report.
okay. All right, anything else, all right, so. you get a
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the consent items are approved, so let's talk about the enterprise funds report.
Well, I was looking at both school community relations and the food services fund for well-stated reasons because of being out of school for weather and this and that. I have a problem in further on in our agenda where we're being asked to approve a community relations program specialist position, and we're being told in this particular piece of the agenda that we're losing money because of increases in September expenditures for purchase of computer equipment, increased staffing costs to bolster enrichment opportunities at the middle school level, higher expenditures in summer months, DSS revenue lags at least a month behind. I'm just concerned. It's like deficit spending. I don't believe in spending money we don't have. We made decisions that impacted the lives of our teacher assistants during the last budget season,
Right.
that they're not being paid for teacher work days when students are not in class. And I would rather see additional information, not from food services, that money always seems to come back. And school community relations has been in the financial plus areas.
Right.
But we haven't had a report, the numbers of
Oh,
kids
okay,
involved right now, the numbers of kids involved in the program. What are the challenges? How is this position really gonna reach out to bring those numbers back up? The sportsplex is getting ready to open up that new facility outside and inside. How does that impact us? I'm not sure I know. Have we've lost kids over the last couple of years?
No, that's incorrect.
Well, just correct me then. I need to know what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. H. I think it's appropriate that you actually raise this question, given the historical perspective of the School Community Relations Department and its staffing challenges that it's had over the years. As you're well aware, at one time there was a director for the School Community Relations Department, and that director position soon evaporated due to total budget issues and also due to, I believe, some legal matters that were there as well. Am I correct?
Yep,
I
yep.
mean, you have better-
Yeah, well, I'm not here to discuss all of that. I had nothing to do with that, by the
So-
way.
So Seth,
What
with
I
the
wanted
fund.
What I wanted to ask is, before we move forward, is that there's a woman already being paid in this position, not getting any benefits. Is that correct?
That is also correct, and also the budget was already approved this year that includes that position at a salary that's higher that's listed in this actual budget item.
Right.
Question before he goes on, because I was not gonna ask to pull this one. This is one that I was gonna talk, and I was gonna wait until we actually got down to the request to add the budget.
All right.
Because it was, if I understood correctly, that part of the reason that we're running a deficit was because the state is behind a month or so on payments. But if you start in July of 2017, our revenues were 61,000. This past year they were 62,000. So our revenue stream actually increased. Our expenditures went up 4,000. So we've got that one. Then in the month of August, revenues last year were 81, and this year they're down to 75. So once school starts, our revenue has dropped. And the question I was gonna actually have we seen a decrease at any or all of our schools that have this program in participation, which kind of gets into who are our competitors. Okay. Then in September, our revenues went from 50 to 49. That's pretty stable, but our expenditures went from 44 to 56. So yes, the state may be behind, but they were behind last year also. So when I compare month to month, the month behind doesn't necessarily explain that. Then when we get to adding the position on that, I was simply going to raise the question that when we said that we were going to have the teacher assistants work on teacher work days, that the money was there, okay, and it still is here. But if we have a full-time position that's going to be dealing with the teacher work days, what are they going to be doing in the summertime when we don't have the teacher work days? We've had teacher work days so far this year. How many students participated? How many teacher assistants actually worked during the teacher work days that we've had this year? How many students participated in the program so far this year?
Can I just interject one thing?
Uh-huh.
So I just want to make sure that we're all clear on where we are.
I'm not.
So we're
We're all
on
over
we're
the
on the
place.
consent, and the board is, if I could, so the board, if I'm not mistaken, has approved the consent, but
Yeah.
one item was pulled.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
and that item was H, and H is an information item, so
It is.
technically
It's
it doesn't need
information.
to be approved. And Dr. H has made some comments about that. I think since it was pulled, it would make sense if there's any comments pertaining to that particular
piece.
item. Let's just finalize those, and then if
All
there's
right.
items that, more discussion that needs to be done around school and community relations
do
item,
that.
then when that comes up, let's
That's
go ahead
what-
and address that at the time if we
That's
could.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I clearly stated that that's when I was gonna do it.
Right.
When that came
Yeah,
up.
he said that.
And then,
Right.
but when Dr. Hackiotis pulled it,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to be pulled, so it just
No
fell-
prob- it's
it
not a
fell in
problem.
there.
Okay.
But it was brought up as the next item to discuss. So I went into the same discussion that Dr. Hackiotis had. And part of my discussion does fall in, which I think Dr. Hackiotis also brought up about the position that we were going to fill. And I think Ms. Stevens mentioned that we already had somebody there that was part-time. So I'm not the only one that went to that
Right.
position.
I'm not saying that you did, I'm just
I'm
saying.
the one that got interrupted.
Yeah,
by
it's
that.
the board can have a discussion. As board members, we can have a discussion on topics like this, and I plan to exercise that right to have that discussion. So the bottom line becomes, I'm merely pointing out that later on, we're being asked to approve something that actually I'm more confused now than I was earlier on, okay? And hopefully, I just want to make sure I'm pointing out, I wanted to point out in that item H, that there were financial consequences to all of this stuff. I'm ready to vote
All
on the
right.
consent agenda.
Okay. So, all right, so Steve has made his comments,
Yeah,
and you made your comments, and
Yeah.
now we're gonna vote on this
yeah,
consent
and we're
agenda
gonna
item.
talk about this thing when we get to
Right,
H.
all
Yeah,
right,
no
so,
problem.
all in favor of approving this,
Yes.
report, which it was,
No, we're doing a consent agenda with this.
We already
item
did
H.
the
Consent agenda's already been
The consent,
approved.
and this
So
is
we're-
just an, we don't need to
we're
do
just-
anything with
All
this,
right.
it's not even an
Yeah,
action
all right.
item.
It's not
We
an
can just-
action
we can
item,
just
because we
discuss
already
it.
approved it. All right, it was a discussion, we've had it, and we thank you. And now, boy, hello tonight. Todd picked a good time. All right, so we're gonna have our resolution, and I've asked Hillary to read it because on October 22nd, when she made her comments, she made a comment about Indigenous Peoples' Day. And this was, ready then, sorta, but now she's gonna read it today.
Okay. The Indigenous Peoples Day Resolution and Native American Heritage Month. Whereas the Orange County Schools Board of Education recognizes that nations of indigenous peoples have lived upon this land known as the Americas since time immemorial, and whereas the Orange County Schools Board of Education values the contributions made to the progress of society accomplished through the knowledge, labor, technology, philosophy, arts, and culture of indigenous peoples, and whereas the Orange County Schools Board of Education understands that to help close the equity and opportunity gap, governments, agencies, and institutions must change policies and practices to reflect the experience of the indigenous peoples of this land and uplift the indigenous roots of this nation. And whereas on February 4th, 2002, the Occaneechi Band of the Sapani Nation, located in Orange and Alamance counties, became the 8th Indian tribe recognized by the state of North Carolina and is one of the 556 indigenous nations of the United States. And whereas in 1990, representatives from 120 indigenous nations at the First Continental Conference on 500 Years of Indian Resistance unanimously passed a resolution to transform Columbus Day into an occasion to strengthen the process of continental unity and struggle towards liberation, and thereby to use the occasion to reveal a more accurate historical record. Now therefore be it resolved that the Orange County Schools Board of Education henceforth shall recognize the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples' Day to celebrate and honor the history, legacy, heritage, and activism of indigenous peoples who have existed here since pre-European colonialism. And be it moreover resolved that the Orange County Schools Board of Education acknowledges that each November is Native American Heritage Month, as declared August 3rd, 1990 by the President of the United States, and that it is a time to celebrate rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Native people. And be it further resolved that the Native American Heritage Month and Indigenous Peoples Day shall be used to reflect upon the struggles of indigenous people in this land and elsewhere to reaffirm a commitment towards reconciliation among all peoples.
Thank you very much for reading that. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Our next item on the agenda.
Do we
Can we go ahead and just have a motion?
Make
You
a
have
motion
you might
to-
have a motion.
Some,
Thank you.
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. So, let's see what we have here. The Board Career and Technical Education Ad Hoc Committee Report. And I have,
All right, is it,
I can, you want
okay, yeah, I mean, that way everybody can see it.
okay.
Any chances here?
Matthew's putting his coat on.
It's getting
Where you
cold.
going?
I believe
We're
it.
not done. Okay, we're not done, Matthew.
No, it's
getting
getting
cold.
cold. That's not all they get.
It sure is, why I got all these on the button.
Snuggie?
All right, so this is the, committee did meet, this past Friday. We went through, put together the ideas and concepts and came back with this presentation to the board. Next slide. So first of all, what are we trying to do with this committee? Our basic purpose would be for the Orange County School Board CTE committee shall be to assist in creating a vision for the CTE program. I want to emphasize that we're viewing this as something to enhance what we have. We're not looking as there's something broken. This is us looking forward. So several items of the goals. One is the vision of the Orange County CTE program. Cultivate the potential in all of our students. Include work-based experience that inspire and add value to our community. This is not only just in thought being some of the options we have now, but thinking of other options and how can we leverage that in our community.
Yeah.
Create programs that will bridge the academic, employability, and technical skills necessary for success. prepare our students for leadership roles in the diverse, changing business world, understand how CTE is meeting the needs of our students and community, improve marketing and recruiting for our CTE programs. This would include inside the schools and outside the school to our greater communities. So all of our children in our school understands these opportunities, and also the parents, so we can have conversations at both levels. And then the second one is to create excitement and knowledge. And I think one of the things that is overlooked when we talk about CTE is keeping kids in school is an important part of all of our mission. And I think giving kids that aren't looking to go to college as an item, hey, this is another avenue. And if I stay in school, here are the opportunities I'm going to get as part of my education. And that hits really on the second bullet. Programs that are meeting our district's population, such as providing opportunities for at-risk and special needs students as well. And then the last item is to review our current CTE process and programs. So as we look at all of these, how does that fit into what we have as part of that thinking? Looking at the makeup, we had a kind of long discussion about this, what makes sense for putting this committee together. The first one was 3 board members to help with this. One was a person from the Business Advisory Counselor Committee to come into this as well. A business industry member that's not on the committee. So we wanted to also pull in somebody that may have a different perspective and bring that person to the board for approval as being part of that committee. Because all the other people are existing staff or people that have already been selected. One CTE teacher, the CTE director, and also we felt like the exceptional children's director as part of looking at, hey, this is what we're looking at to be inclusive, them giving their perspective and ideas on that. The last slide is for this process is this group would prepare these recommendations. We would bring that to the Business Advisory Council to get their perspective, since we would only have one member and one of the CTE representatives, and then bring that to the board as an overall approval once we've gone through that. So that gives us a chance to have a review at multiple levels and not just bypass this Business Advisory Board that we feel is very important to this process. Any questions? Or any comments, I should say, from the...
Yeah, we seem to, yeah.
Any comments first from the other...
No, you did a good job.
No,
Oh, thank you.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This is more just a general question since you are the chair of this committee. I'm just want to make sure that partnership is taken into consideration as much as Orange and Cedar Ridge in these discussions. And I just wanted to touch base with you that that's on your radar and that that's going to be something that's really out there.
That's a great point, and that's why we specifically put the at-risk kids to make sure
Gotcha.
that was inclusive as that well. But you're absolutely right.
Fantastic.
We want to make sure
Yep.
that that's included. Sarah?
I just had, I think this seems very exciting. A couple of thoughts I was having, one on the goals, in thinking about improving the marketing and the recruiting, I was recalling that the Business Advisory Council also named that, I think, as one of their priorities for the year, and so I know that you have a member of that group on this, but just like, it would be weird if there were 2 separate marketing efforts or something like that, so
Yeah, it
just
would
some
be.
sort of,
You're right.
Yeah, the intent is to not define what the marketing would be, but more of, hey, we think that there should be some kind of pamphlet that has, I'm making this up, so please forgive me. So here are the classes and the areas that you could go into a specific CTE area. Here's the student organizations and stuff. That wouldn't be us doing that. We would say more, in my opinion, hey, we believe there should be a marketing pamphlet that's simplified and covers these 3 items. And like I said, moving from us to that group, this should not be micromanaging that group.
Right.
This
okay,
should
so
be,
that still would be their
Yeah.
effort, you would have like
Absolutely.
advice for
It would
that
actually
effort,
focus on
right?
like this, maybe like the CTE concentrators, those type things, where those business individuals could actually see, hey, these are some of the classes that these students are taking. you know, they may be good for your particular industry in, you know, because they have those skills.
Yeah, but he was talking about this group as it relates to the group that is set up by the state that we have.
Right, the Business Advisory
Yeah.
Committee. In my humble view, we would be providing guidance on what we think should be in the marketing, where they would be putting the details
Right.
into what the marketing. For example, we would say, hey, you know, we think that an opportunity is the website to make it easier to get to find. And here are some bullet points we would think. Hey, in our brochures, we should add actually how much a plumber makes,
Right.
for example. You know, we think those should be included, and then they would go take that and figure out in what form and fashion that could be created.
Oh, yeah.
Just a
Steve, yeah,
comment.
spoken.
I think we
Excuse me,
need
excuse me.
to look at Partnership Academy as our third high school. It started out as a mandate by state law that you had to provide an alternative to suspensions and expulsions. And it has evolved over the years as a high school of choice for some kids who don't want all the rah-de-dah and pom-poms and hoopla that goes along with
Right.
the big comprehensive high schools we have at Orange and Cedar Ridge. So the thing that I thought came out of the small group meeting was the fact that there was a genuine concern for each and every child in the Orange County school system. With a focus on special needs kids and at-risk kids who sometimes fall through the cracks. And that's the important reason of putting the EC director on this little group. And not trying to take anything away from the Business Advisory Council, which is already up there by state law.
Right.
Just to be part of enhancing the opportunity for a discussion among school board members. That each and every one of us has strong feelings about what we think this program should be doing for all of our children. And we need to have an opportunity to say that. That's why the people elected us and put us here, because we need to let them know we care about all of the children. Not just a small group at Orange High or a small group at Cedar Ridge. We care about the partnership kids, we care about the kids who have serious disabilities, we care about the very, very everything. And that's just the whole purpose of this thing.
Because Hillary,
To expand,
No,
what's that?
you're here.
To expand on what you were saying and what I was saying, I've heard feedback that the kids at Partnership have a really hard time getting into CTE classes because they're already filled by the students at
We
other.
need to change that.
Right, so I'm just putting it out there because I think it's really important to add to what you're saying,
Right.
that
I like
that's a
it.
consideration.
right. See,
Yeah.
that's a very good
That's a
point.
very
It is, it
Oh,
is.
to tag on what both Hillary and Dr. Hackilders were saying, particularly on Partnership Academy, that is an opportunity for us to take a good look at that, get it expanded, get the programs there to where they can get the skill set to get a job when they go out. Because they're still in school. They're high risk, but at least we're successful keeping them in school. Which means, and I asked the question a while back to the principal from that school, do they have the facility necessary to allow that program to grow? And he was honest enough not to say, no, he doesn't. So that falls in, we need to have that discussion on how we can expand that program. Because I do see it as our third high school. I see it as a very important part of our district going forward. And I think it's a program that we need to figure out how to expand and leverage. And it's just not for the students that are getting potentially expelled.
That's
I know children who have gone there, that they chose to go there because it's a smaller, less intense environment. And it worked for them.
It absolutely, yeah. We had one student at State of the Schools, or one event, Mr. Jeffries, remember? He was one example. Sarah?
The other thing that I had just a sort of a question about is the recommendation flow, and as I'm thinking about sort of the vision for CTE, I'm excited that this group is gonna have some thoughts about all of that, but there isn't sort of a, like, the administration, piece in this flow, and so I was curious, I wish Dr. Wirt were here tonight to talk about how he would like that to work. I don't know if you all, if he was at your meeting or you all discussed that, but it seems like this is school board committee, business advisory, school board, and it feels really important to involve the administration and the vision of the CTE program as well.
So I wish we could bring up the actual business advisory. There's several of our administrators in there and also administrators in here.
Mhm.
I mean, I would expect, I mean, we could put it out there and insert Dr. Word, obviously, but I would not envision us doing this in a vacuum. It would be not effective. But so is your recommendation putting an extra step in there to?
I would put a step before the board that is like administration, cabinet, superintendent, whatever, some sort of administration piece before the school board approval so that.
Can you define who that is?
I mean, maybe Ms. Woodson, I'm Dr. Word, Ms. Woodson, I'm not really sure exactly who
So
you're
leads
on
that,
the
but.
business advisory council.
she's already on it, so,
Okay.
so what
Not
cabinet,
officially.
Steve?
Not
I
officially.
am in, there's no CT director, so I
Right.
am leading it in the
Right.
stead of that person at this point in time, because that's there.
If I could address your
As far as an official member of the board, no.
Right, I just
Council,
saw
I'm
that
not.
you were appointed,
I think
Yeah.
part of the reasoning behind this ad hoc committee
Oh,
was that the board never was involved in the process. The board, to my knowledge, it goes back a few years, to say the least, has never been involved in the process of looking out and having an opportunity for input into a visionary look at what our CTE program might look like. It's been staff-driven, with all due respect to the staff. I have praised staff publicly on numerous occasions. But the board has never had an opportunity other than to vote approval. And we have never voted not to approve something. So we've never had an opportunity to have input on what we think is important for CTE. So what is wrong with the board having an opportunity to be part of that process?
Oh.
Staff has opportunity.
Right.
It is just, this is just a little
Okay,
side
so
piece
that's
where the
in
board
here.
actually has an opportunity. And by bringing it back to the whole board, that means the whole board has an opportunity to get into this visionary planning for CTE.
I just wanted to make sure that administration wasn't sort of cut out of the process. It
Yeah,
wasn't
no.
like board
The
committee
board's been
and then
cut out of the
board
process for
member.
45 years.
Right,
No,
right.
That's
Well,
what's been
committee-
cut out.
well, it says here that the staff is a part of it.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
it
they are.
says
Yeah,
it.
they're
So
in it,
how could you,
physically.
I mean, what do you mean left out?
That's why I was asking
Exceptional
who.
children's director is a part of the group, this, CTE director, also known as Michelle Woodson right now, the CTE teacher, so we have staff,
3 staff members.
right.
Sure, well, as sort of like
Plus the
co-equal
business
members
committee.
of it, right? I mean, I think that, to me, in sort of setting a vision for, I totally agree with you, that I'm glad that this committee exists, I voted in favor of creating it. I think it's an excellent opportunity to think about the vision of the program, totally agree. I feel like there should be a step in here that's like, and then superintendent work, like, comes up with the final thing and brings it to the board to approve. I think the board coming up with sort of the vision for the program, and it feels odd to me.
Right, well, look, can I say that the superintendent's designee is a part of this committee, and it's my understanding, and correct me, Patrick, if I'm wrong, that the superintendent holds regular cabinet meetings, and so you all are communicating and, ongoing. So I don't believe that he's left out of it. I believe the superintendent's designee is there. He can't be a part of every committee, but I do know that he knows what's going on.
Yeah,
And he will know what's going on.
Whether named or not named, obviously, the superintendent and the district administration would be part of the process, as
That's right,
both
he is.
to
That's his
provide
job.
input and for support of the initiatives and the goals and the vision of the board, even though it's not specifically stated, the
Okay.
superintendent or designee, that certainly could be added to just clarify that the superintendent or designee is part of that, but we certainly would, have input in the process.
Because he's the superintendent, he can go to anything.
Yep.
You
That's
know?
exactly right.
He can go to any committee because he is the boss.
Yep.
So we don't have to name him, but we are naming these other people because they can't walk in and put themselves on the
Right.
committee.
Okay.
So, that's good, so it looks good. And the only thing that I will say, I will reiterate what we said on October 22nd, that this ad hoc committee would sunset in 6 months, which would be around April 22nd, 2019. That's 6 months.
So.
Oddly enough, this April 22nd is our second board meeting in April. So you're looking at Steve, so look at me and tell me what you're thinking.
So I was under the opinion, and this came up in the committee, was it was 6 months from when the committee was created versus when we voted it. But there wasn't clarity on what the 6 months meant.
Wasn't it created on October 22nd?
No, I mean the approval of the actual
Oh.
going forward. And
Oh,
there's
from
also
this.
at least
Oh.
one person that we have to bring back to the board to get them approved before we actually have a first meeting. So we actually have one other step, and the earliest we could get that approved is next month.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to request that it starts when that person gets approved, which would be or just say it ends in June.
No, I'm not gonna say that. I would like to be clear, you know, I would like to be clear to everyone.
Sure.
So, you were asking that, you know, our meeting, in December is when we would do it.
When we
So
would
6
approve the
months,
person,
so 6 months from there.
December
help me.
10th.
Can I ask a question
Don't you
about
December
that?
10th is the meeting.
Right,
That's what
right.
you're looking
So
at.
go on and ask your question, I'm
So my
sorry.
question about that timeline is, are we gonna have to wait to hire a CTE director until after that, until June or July 2019? Because I don't think that's a very good idea. I think we should have a CTE
No, I
director.
don't think
sooner.
we should
We don't
wait
have
till
to wait.
June. I think we should hire a CTE director as soon as possible.
Right.
Once everybody has had a discussion on
Right.
this.
Okay,
Right.
so there might be things coming out of the
Yeah.
committee
Right.
over time,
Right.
as
I-
opposed to
Right.
sort of a big bang in
Right.
June.
That's
That's sort of what I'm
Absolutely.
trying to
That's right.
clarify.
Absolutely, although we didn't say it, there's several things in there, and if we don't, for example, prioritize something like, the marketing, we could do that one quickly, have the discussion, you know, give some opinions on it, go through the process, then bring it to the board, and then go after all of them. I think if we tried to do a big bang, there'd be low value, and especially while we're talking about CTE director.
Right. Okay, before Jonathan, I call on you, what I wanna say is the reason I didn't wanna do June, is you know, school ends in June,
Yeah.
and that's too far, yeah, go ahead.
Brenda, we've seen programs disappear
Mm-hmm.
from historically Orange High School was the home of the masonry program,
It
bricklaying.
was. Remember that.
And people ask me all the time, how come they don't teach bricklaying anymore? Well, there's a whole host of reasons why we don't teach bricklaying anymore. It wasn't a decision made by the school board. The
No.
school board stamped dropping that course of study a long time ago, and nobody really questioned what was going on, okay? They dropped electricity on recommendation of staff. They never had plumbing. The program that has survived basically are two programs, the furniture making program at Cedar Ridge that originally was at Orange High, and the Project House program that hooked up with Habitat for Humanity and Sports Endeavors. That's been a wonderful relationship going down other avenues. And the host of programs, whether they're business education inside the school, career, homemaking, whatever it's called nowadays. The title changes every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's a host of other programs that are still going on. But the big programs, the community never knew why they disappeared, okay? And then we hear people saying, well, there's nothing for some of our kids to take. We feel it's important for the community to have an opportunity to tell us what they would like to see. What is wrong with that? And with all due respect to staff, it's wonderful for them to make recommendations, and it's also a responsibility for the school board to have a discussion on what it thinks should be part of an important CTE program. And I'm gonna tell you something, the one group that's been left out of this discussion for 45 years that I have a history with this school system has been the school board. They never had an opportunity to actually talk about programming and CTE programs. And long before it was CTE, it was vocational education.
Okay.
And long before it was the CTE director, it was the voc ed director. So, you know, give the board an opportunity to have a discussion about this stuff. Why is it important to all of our communities? For those kids especially who are not going off to college.
Well, I think we are all singing from that hymn book that you're preaching from. Jonathan has a
Just a couple
comment.
of tinies. One, with the 6 months, what my recommendation would be that when you bring the person in December, that action item includes then whatever date it is that you all wanted, so that we're clear. And I also think that date, let's be clear, is that the date when the recommendations are made? Obviously, you can't control the date when it gets to the business advisory review or when it gets to the board. So of this process, but in 6 months, the committee will have made recommendations. If you can just think about that and define it in the motion that comes up so that everybody's clear on that.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
The way I was thinking about
Okay.
it, and we didn't put it in there, is
Sure.
that's the goal to be done, not that we wouldn't finish earlier, but that was the board saying, hey,
Yeah.
we want a stake in the ground, we don't wanna keep this thing forever,
That's right.
but to your point, I can meet, and also we have to get a recommendation to bring back to the board, so we'll bring that as part of the timeline.
Just give that some thought, because sometimes things can get a little out of the committee's hands about when it actually gets to and you list board approval, you know, you may not have that control when that happens. So and then the only other thing that I just wondered about is there's a number of members that raised the issue of partnership. Would you want in the goals to review CTE opportunities for students at partnership to assure accessibility? Would you want that as an added goal? I'm not saying that you do, I just thought a number of members.
Yeah, do that.
We can
Let's do
absolutely
that.
put it in there, I
Let's
mean,
add that.
we considered it as at risk, but we can explicitly put it because we're
Yeah.
all on board with that.
Yeah.
So the language I
Let's just
had
not
was
say
review
that, yes.
CT opportunities for students at partnership
Yeah.
to assure accessibility.
And
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
think it's a little bit different, because
Yes.
there's at-risk students at the other main high schools, and I think partnership is its own
Right. So I like that wording.
consideration.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
great, that's good
I like
wording. And the
Because
reason
in terms
I,
of like transportation and stuff.
right, and the
I'm sorry
reason,
about
that's
that.
okay, the reason I was mentioning, not going past June, it sort of dovetails with what Steve was saying, because when school ends, things start to fall by the wayside, and then maybe they don't get picked up. So if we could like, put our stake in the ground and have it in, May, or, who knows, might finish earlier. So let's,
I'm sorry.
go
Please
on,
finish,
go on.
please finish.
No.
We'll
You all
just ask me for the language. It
You all
was-
just go on and have your
No,
conversation.
please.
Just go on and just keep talking.
That's right.
Steve,
For those of you who are going to the School Board Association state meeting next week, last year they showed a video, Doggett, is that his name? Who's a professional contract, former superintendent, communicator who'll come into your district for big bucks and give you a pep talk. Showed a video of the robotic bricklayer, remember that?
yep,
He can lay more bricks than a human being, he lays them straighter, there's less waste than materials, and this went on and on and on and on. I haven't seen a robotic bricklayer here in Orange County. If there's one, I'd like to know where it is so I can go see it in person. We've got human beings here that need skills to earn a living. And a starting plumber can make more money than a starting teacher. Somebody who's an initial entry person at the DMV up here, who checks your eyes and sees if you answer questions correctly, makes a starting salary higher than a beginning teacher. It's posted up there. We need to have every opportunity available for our kids. We need to be able to educate parents to tell them what's available. And just get the whole community involved in this. This can be a win-win for everybody.
yep, it can. So, Jonathan and Will, are you all clear on what you were saying, and communicate it so the board will be clear on what you all are saying?
I'm
What were you,
sorry.
no, what were you saying? I
We'll
wanna know.
just wanted the language, so I.
Oh, okay.
Just
for
to
the
add
board.
it to the chart
Says
right now.
Review CTE opportunities for students at partnership to assure accessibility.
Yeah, that's important.
Perfect, got it.
That's very important, and we thank you. And we also were saying that, this committee will sunset our first or second meeting in May. Let's say the first meeting in May, because they start testing, and that's the end of the school year, the first meeting in May.
Yeah, if this committee can't do its work by then, it never should have been put in place to begin with.
Wow,
Wow.
thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Meeting tomorrow.
Book your family
How about
doctor.
tonight, right after this meeting?
All right, congratulations. Next, we're moving on to school calendars 2019-2020.
I'll Mr. Johnson. while his PowerPoint's loading there, I will say this is an annual process, that the administration comes before the school board to approve the academic calendars for the upcoming school year, and so there is a process, and Mr. Johnson has led the process and is bringing back the committee's
The
recommendations.
committee members that we recognize for many years. Welcome, committee members. All right. Oh, there it is, it's up. All right.
I'm presenting to you tonight a draft of the traditional and year-round calendars for the 2019-2020 school year. It's being presented to you tonight as information. As you will see on this slide are calendar committee members. I want to note that we have two calendar committee members with us tonight, Julie Workman and Ron Roche. I also want to note that they put in a lot of work around the calendar committee, a lot of debate, a lot of honest and transparent conversations, so I really appreciate them. In terms of the calendar creation process, we first met on September 27th to discuss the calendar, discuss the laws around the calendar, and ultimately create the draft calendars that were presented to staff, parents, as well as administration. And one thing about the calendar committee, they clearly understood that their role was to be transparent and go out and gather information from staff and parents. Once the calendar committee gathered the feedback, we met again on October 16th. At that meeting, we discussed the feedback, we analyzed the feedback. During that meeting, that's where we talked about the no early release, no early release days. They were adamant about it. And I also mentioned last year at the board meeting, we did discuss it as well. So at the October 16th meeting, we created a draft. The draft went back out to the committee for their thumbs up or thumbs down. So the calendars that you have before you tonight were created October 16th. Some highlights of the calendar: there's no early release days, as noted earlier. One thing that we were really excited about with the calendar was the alignment of work days, well, 2 work days between traditional and year-round, especially that August 23rd date, where all staff will be together for job alike. That hasn't been done, as far as we know, between year-round and traditional. And the committee was also excited around that too. And we have 2 weeks for holiday break this up next year. On this slide, you will note that there are legal requirements. Some of these legal requirements guided our conversation for creating the calendar. Also, before we move on from this slide, I want to note that we, which is really important, in Orange County schools, we go by instructional hours, not necessarily how many days. On this slide, you'll just note that the holidays that we'll be observing. Again, this is our calendar breakdown. So we have 180 student days, 14 teacher work days, 10 annual vacation leave, and 11 holidays. And again, in Orange County schools, we go by instructional hours.
And I thank you for emphasizing that, because we remember, those of us sitting around this table remember what a heavy lift it was to get those few minutes added. It really made a difference in us not having to make up days and where other people around here have to make up days. It was, the board was split, but I think it was to everybody's advantage in the long run.
I agree. I agree. And I remember those days as well.
Yeah.
So on this slide, you'll note the instructional hours as well as the makeup plan. So as you know, the first 5 days of instruction that we miss, we're turning teacher work days, but the students don't have to make those days up. Are there any questions?
Oh, you can, do you all, Will?
I have a question. So, every election year, we have the schools running, like at Cameron Park, you have the buses coming and people going through the parking lot and such. Has the committee ever discussed making that a teacher workday so we don't have that massive amount of unknown people in our schools? Because I can tell you it was an eye-opener to me when I experienced it, just hey, there's a lot of kids getting on and off the bus, and given the state of where we're at, it seems like we want to be, some safety. Anyway, I'm just curious if y'all talked about that, or, I mean, obviously for this year, it's not an option, but.
What, in the past, we have had conversations around that. One of the concerns, one, we thought we wanted to revisit that during the presidential election. But
Absolutely.
two, the concern was around breaking up 2 weeks in a row. So like we have Veterans Day 1 week, and then the previous week would be the election. So that'd be 2 weeks in a row that the kids will go to school for 4 days. Which, I mean, we have some of the similar breaks in January.
Yeah, my concern is the safety, because definitely anybody could walk up. I mean, they're in the gym at that point. There's no checking of the people other than they check in. Anyway,
It's very, I have to say, it is very secure. In the voting site, you don't let people in there because the judges are not allowing people in there if they're not voting. And I noticed at Cameron Park, Miss Williamson didn't allow us to come in there and use the bathroom because she did not want that traffic in and out of the school, which I understand. So that was the security, the staff, they were on the ball. So I don't think we have to worry about security. And having worked a couple of elections over in the Chapel Hill schools, they have that security as well. They just won't let you go down the halls.
Gravelly Hill has the security.
Yeah, so I think our staff's well versed in the security business.
But we had discussed that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just an administration comment, as part of the board's legislative agenda, we would just still ask that the North Carolina General Assembly provide additional calendar flexibility to local boards of education. It is very difficult when you're mandated on the first day to begin school and mandated on the day to end school, and the number of work days and holidays in the calendar. There is very little flexibility and options for the committee, and especially with inclement weather or other things that may come up. And so we would continue to stress anytime we discuss school calendars to note that there needs to be additional flexibility, and we just would note that for your legislative agenda.
Thank you so much. So this is not an action item. If you don't have, we thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you so much.
We know that it's hard work and you have other things to do, but we thank you for taking this on again and again, because I've seen your name on there a lot.
Well, Mr. Johnson did a wonderful job in the committee this year.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for taking time to come out. Next, Family Success Alliance Board Member Representative. All right, she's up.
Good evening, I hope you all are well.
Yeah.
I'm here tonight just to simply propose to you an opportunity to determine, we are here to determine a representative from the Orange County Board of Education to serve on the Family Success Alliance Advisory Council. The Advisory Council meetings are generally held the third Monday of the month, of every other month from 1 to 3 o'clock. Participation of a board representative that might be interested in attending would be in addition to the district representation, which is also filled by myself. And there's obviously more information to be had. Generally, what we've been doing as a part of that advisory council is identifying geographically identified priority areas of high need to pilot focused, collective impact approach to providing a pipeline of success from birth to college career for children and families of the county. In addition to that, serving as a convening body known as the backbone of the organization and a catalyst to coordinate partnership among governing agencies, nonprofits, individuals around the pipeline to success in the county. Assist in the development of a shared set of goals and standard set of quantitative and qualitative indicators to target activities and measures of progress. Recommend specific evidence-based programs, policies to fill gaps in the pipeline through coordination of existing services or development of new initiatives. And finally, to pursue funding and development opportunities to meet the needs that cannot be addressed by the coordination of existing policies, programs, or services.
Right.
So the superintendent would like to recommend that we determine a representative for the
Right.
FSA council.
Well, let me say that I did check, and the chair of the Chapel Hill Schools, their chair is serving on that board, and so I would like to say, as our chair, I would like to serve on that board, so.
Great, thank
So
you.
that's done. Thank you very
Sounds
much.
good to me.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're not
Thank you,
gonna
Brenda.
do us.
We're 100% supportive.
Move the work right along.
Moves the work right along.
All right, okay, so now, the, board policy committee recommendations, well, I told Hillary she wouldn't have to do it, but I was just fooling. So you, no, you don't.
Look, I can do it, but.
I know you can, so yeah, Patrick is going to do that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. We have several board policies before you this evening for first reading. We appreciate the hard work from the policy committee administration in preparing the review and feedback for you this evening. I'll walk through several of these policies, and I'll be assisted by legal counsel, Mr. Blumberg, as well. The first policy, I'm going to go in order as listed on the abstract, policy 2230. Board committees, there was additional work done to the policy, just a couple minor changes. One was talking about standing committees and the expiring term of those unless reaffirmed by the board, and then the board establishing that temporary committees would have a defined specific purpose, and they would have a defined start and end date as you've just discussed on your previous committee.
Right.
So,
And standing committees would be approved by formal action of the board.
Correct, which we
Questions?
have done.
questions about that policy?
Just one quick question. It's
Mhm.
listed, right now, I know we have the policy committee,
Mhm.
it's saying it's the standing committee. Then we also have the student achievement committee, is that the
And the budget
temporary?
committee, no, it's not. The temporary one is the CTE. Mhm.
Well, reason I asked that, because the only standing committee that was specified in this was, and I may be missing it, is the policy committee.
Okay.
So that's a great point. I don't know why the standing committee of the board is the policy committee is in there, because that was designed to come out. So it is that, because it indicates a standing committee will expire at the end of each school year unless reaffirmed by the board. That's the last line under standing committee. So you're absolutely correct. The standing committee of the board is the policy committee. That should be struck. I don't know if that somehow just
Okay.
percolated
I
back
just
up.
wanna- I just wanna make sure.
You're paying attention?
So good job, that's a good catch. I don't know how that percolated back in there, but it did.
It percolated.
I'm surprised that got by you last week.
It wasn't, I don't think it was there.
It wasn't there.
I don't know.
I think it was there.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Kudos to Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts
One
put it
committee
there.
that's dear to my heart wasn't on there, so I'll go ahead and stay.
So we bring him twice.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good catch.
Next one is 2300 board meetings.
Mhm.
Minor changes just being brought back to committee for consideration based on feedback. Primary purpose of the review is to ensure there is public comment at both regular Board of Education meetings and work sessions. And I'll ask the Attorney Blumberg to add one additional note that we do feel like you would discuss in committee that is currently not in policy.
So under types of meetings, A1, regular meetings and work sessions. When you get down to the discussion of the work session,
Mhm.
let me just see. No, this one I think is okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
I'm
fine.
good with
All
that.
right, so
Okay.
that one,
It-
that one has it.
We're
Okay.
good, no changes.
All right,
but
so,
I-
yeah, it has that, right, is that
Yes,
in it?
that's correct.
Not to exceed, okay, got it.
All right. So, questions or comments about policy 2300?
It does make it clear that both work sessions and regular meetings and attend unless approved by the board for extension.
Right.
So that was not clear in the prior one.
But it's clear now. All right, we'll go to the next one.
Policy 2302, remote participation of board meetings. Again, suggested changes were brought back based on recommendations to allow board members to participate remotely in meetings of the board. This is very consistent with other policies around the state. So this would be an additional policy that would allow for authorized circumstances, remote participation up to 3 times per year as indicated in policy. So questions or comments about that?
The only question I have is, can we do a trial run of this somehow?
Like, do you want to miss a meeting and?
I didn't say I would.
I just
No,
want to
but,
get
I mean,
clarification on.
so
what a trial
it
is.
talks about having the staff have a chance to prepare it up to 24 hours. And I would think taking a committee meeting or something to try that, just so we work out the kinks or how it actually works. I mean, I'm not recommending a board, maybe a committee meeting, we try it and.
I think anytime we're implementing new processes, and especially technical processes, we would thoroughly vet that and test that. I'll be more than happy to miss a cabinet meeting for the superintendent. But we would certainly.
Test the waters.
We would certainly test it before it's launched and
All
rolled
right,
out. So
well, that's a good recommendation. You missed the cabinet meeting, okay.
Generous.
Said, I guess Todd is watching this.
All right.
Okay.
Next policy is 2310, public participation of board meetings, and this one is brought back to the board and recommended the committee approve suggesting changes in that, and there was some reorganization done within the policy as well. And again, as was just mentioned, there would be an opportunity for public comment both at the regular meeting, but then also the work sessions based on items on the agenda that appear printed as well. Questions or comments?
So that was the one, and committee members, correct me if I'm wrong, and Dr. H was there as well, but under public comments, A2 work sessions, where it says the total duration of public comment at a work session may not exceed 1 hour, I believe the committee added unless extended by vote of the board.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we
That's
could
correct.
add that, unless extended by a vote of the board.
Okay, all right. Gonna move along to the next
All
one?
right. I have two policies in reference to admission to the Orange County schools and transfers within schools under policy 4120, missing Orange County schools. Policy 4125, school assignment and transfers. We needed additional clarification in policies to include language about in reference to athletic eligibility for either students being admitted that live outside the district per the North Carolina High School Athletic Association guidelines. Those students receive an automatic 365-day from athletic participation. They are not eligible unless they request a waiver from the association. For in-district transfers, we added language to include that grades 6 through 8 student transfers would not be impacted. Those students would be allowed to participate in athletics as long as the sole reason for the transfer was not based on athletic participation. For member students, grades 9 through 12, if the initial transfer was a bona fide transfer that was approved during the transfer process, during the 9th grade, then they would be eligible for athletic participation without the need to request a waiver. But if a student starts high school in one high school and then wants to transfer to another high school, based on the policy and the High School Athletic Association guidance, they would not be eligible to participate unless they ask for a waiver and is granted a waiver. So we have added that language to be clear in policy because we needed additional clarification, and we have additional regulations and procedures that have been updated to accommodate both for the procedures and processes. And there was one minor correction in 4125. There just seems to be some redundancy in the first and second paragraph, and so we'll strike the sentence in the second paragraph, and that'll be taken out on your second reading.
And that's the in addition, high school students who are granted a voluntary transfer eligible to participate in athletics. If the initial voluntary transfer was granted in grade 9, that will be taken out, as Mr. Abilene said, because that is duplicated in the paragraph above. And just I think it would be helpful that if it is one of these situations where it's an appeal, the primary issue on appeal is this for best interest of the child, a solid academic reason, or is it for athletic reasons? And athletic reasons would not be approved at that point in general. So that's the primary standard, because the North Carolina High School Athletic Association says that school districts within the district can govern whether you allow athletic eligibility, but you need to have uniform standards. And so that's what the regulations and procedures will be, is the uniform standards that allow the district to decide appeals.
When you are considering, we're gonna ask you to approve these policies as a group in just a couple minutes, but when you are considering approval of this policy, we would add that approval include a waiver or grandfathering to uphold athletic eligibility for students in grades 9 through 12 who've already been previously approved on a transfer. So those students would continue with their athletic eligibility, and we'll just need to note that if you agree when you're doing your motion for the policies. And we have one last policy, policy 7610, defense of board employees, and I'll ask Mr. Blumberg to review for the board.
This policy, and you're coming around with just a few revisions. This policy was presented to the policy committee, and the revisions are the revisions that the policy committee supported. And so what you're getting is really what the policy committee approved. But the short version of this is that the law does allow and policy does allow the school system to appoint an attorney to defend a school system employee when they're involved in a lawsuit. And that this policy creates the conditions on which the board would appoint counsel to do so, primarily that the employee is basically doing their job, acting in the course and scope of their employment. But given the limited resources that the district has, that if the employee has an attorney from another source, such as a trust or an insurance provider, then that's where the employee would get representation. And so the school system would be sort of a last resort if the employee is not otherwise appointed counsel. But beyond that, some of the other strikeouts are what the committee recommended to the board as really not being necessary in this policy at this time.
Okay. Do you have any comments? All right, Patrick?
That's it.
That's it. So
I have one question.
Okay, all right.
And it's just curiosity. So I noticed that most of the dates on the date reviewed are like recent, like 11/5/2018. But like some of these 7610 shows 5/7/2018, and then the other there's some that are like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Are they just not updated, and they would be updated as part of this, or I'm trying to figure out
two parts.
Right, I know that some happened earlier in the year and they're catching up, but I was just the 2017 I just didn't
So
get.
all policies that went to the policy committee will be updated before you see these again on second reading to reflect the policy committee review. 7610 was one that was previously reviewed at a different policy committee, and so that date would stand on that policy. But thank you, we will make sure all of the policies that have recently been reviewed have the correct dates.
Okay, no problem. Like I said, I just
Okay.
noticed that the dates were different.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna ask for approval of this, but I'll need a little paragraph read by Sarah Smiley, who's holding it, to, so if we can get approval of all of it.
So I would do a motion to approve all of these policies. Policy 4125 approval would include a waiver and grandfathering to uphold athletic eligibility for students in grades 9 through 12 previously approved for a transfer to attend another school in the district. All other policies, approval for first reading as indicated with modifications as noted by the board.
Second.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Sarah. You're a great reader. Thank you.
Thanks to my schools, my public schools.
Yeah, right. All right, so now we're down to Community Relations Program Specialist. All right, we're gonna.
Mr. Stevens?
Oh, yes, he's on his way to the podium. He's on his way to the podium. Can I believe that? This is the last item. All right, so, thank you. If you can go on and present us with something.
All right, I still have some questions left over for Mr. Roberts, if you'd like me to begin there.
What did you say?
You
No.
want to go ahead and go with
Well,
Okay,
go
I
on
was
with
just
what
trying
you
to
have,
honor-
and then we'll grab Mr. Roberts' questions in a minute, if that's all right.
And then I wanna go back to something you said earlier, cause I'm totally ignorant about what you said. That some person has already been hired.
No, person's just been working, doing this all along,
Oh,
from what I hear.
okay, all right.
No, nobody's been, yeah.
Bring clarity to all
Yeah,
this.
I will. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes, sir.
Currently, we do have an individual on a TTC, the lawyer tells me that's a temporary terminated contract, who works in SCR in the clerical assistant role. Previous to that TTC being in place and approved by the
For
board,
the sake of people watching, let's just say exactly what TTC, SCR, what that stuff means, okay?
School Community Relations is what SCR stands
Thank you.
for. And to reiterate, TTC is a temporary terminated
Good.
contact.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Mr. Bloomberg?
Temporary
Yeah.
terminated contract, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
He said that
everyone could hear you
twice.
the first time.
I said that.
Prior to me taking on the role of being the executive over the functions of School Community Relations, SCR, there existed a clerical assistant position within the department. There was some disruption of operations.
Now I'm seeing where you're going, okay?
There was some disruption.
Because maybe this should not be a function of your office. You were handed this.
Yeah,
Historically, the PIO didn't do this. You were handed this function.
Yes, but classically in many districts throughout this state.
I'm not talking about many districts, I'm talking about this district over a period of 50 years. There was a separate director that actually sat on the superintendent's cabinet 2 years ago. So we're good, we're good.
Okay. Person prior to me was the PIO, so, okay. I'll go with it. There's a third person there.
What, on acronyms, since, okay, what's PIO?
Public Information Officer.
Okay, okay.
We're good.
All right. There one time existed a third person in the office who functioned as a clerical assistant. For some time, at the incipience of my office taking over the executive functions of the School Community Relations, there was a good bit of having to unravel, straighten up, and clean some serious issues there. Fiscal, fiduciary responsibility, legal, and ethical. Since that time, we made strides to increase revenues, to increase the number of students who are served, to also to increase the programming that is offered, to increase the efficiency of the programmatic delivery, and to also keep in good faith the fiduciary responsibility that we have as an enterprise fund for the district. Earlier in the year, last spring, the board approved the budget for 2018-2019. In that budget is a position that is currently open for a clerical assistant. This move is being brought to your consideration to restore, in full transparency, a person back into that permanent position. Currently, the temporary terminating contract, the TTC, has someone working under a 29-hour per week maximum cap. This person works those 29 hours. This person does have more work, or the office itself has more work than 29 hours available, available that needs to be used insofar as with the work that's there and getting it done timely. I would ask that the board consider this insofar as the salary was approved for this position last year along with the concordant benefits, and that there is currently dual money on the books for one position under the temporary terminating contract insofar as the 29 hours max per week is reached, and the fact that the budget still includes the open position that was approved.
So,
Sarah, all right, Sarah and then Steve.
So I'm confused from a budgetary standpoint. How, if the position exists in the budget, why do we need to approve it? You know what I mean? Like, if it exists, why do we need to approve it?
Okay, all right.
well, the question I was gonna ask is this, and you raised a good question, because you used the word dual. So it's like we got two footprints out there
Yeah.
and two budgetary baskets. But before we get to that, How many people are working there right now, Seth?
We have a coordinator, we have 2 program specialists.
The coordinator was the fellow that he was assistant principal at Stanback, and he went there, right? He's the coordinator.
That's correct.
And you've got.
I'm looking at Jonathan.
Yeah, that's coordinator.
Yeah, that's coordinator.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep it at positions level and open
Okay,
session.
well, yeah,
okay.
we're not
Okay.
trying to put a face with a position,
Gotcha.
because, you know,
Okay.
as you get older, you have to do these things.
You're doing great.
Of course, you don't know that
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, I do.
You will, though, shortly. So the bottom line becomes, we have 2 people who've been there for a long time, 2 positions.
Okay.
Okay. So there's 3 people there right now, right?
4.
Who's the 4th one?
Well,
What's the
Temporary,
4th position?
temporary.
The temporary
The
attorney.
temporary,
Uh-huh,
that's been there,
uh-huh.
is she, are they getting paid?
The individual receives monies for time worked. I just wanna make sure I'm.
Because
looking
he's
at the
talking
You're
balance.
about
okay,
not putting
you're
your name
okay,
to
you're
it.
talking about a position.
Okay.
Stop worrying about the attorney and just let's answer the questions here, because I don't, you know, this is very confusing, is what I'm saying. And all I wanna say is this, because I was here when the PIO position originally was envisioned in this system. I was also, and that was, their responsibilities had nothing to do with school community relations.
Right.
You were handed this piece to clean up and take care of. You didn't ask for it. It was handed to you by 4 or 5 superintendents past, okay? So I'm just trying to separate all of this. Because maybe, from what I'm trying to say is, legitimately, you could maybe spend more time doing things in your real role than this management piece over there. The disaster was cleaned up, just so we can understand where we need to go with this thing and move on with it. So I don't want you to take anything personally, I'm just trying to separate all of this confusing mess. So we've actually got 4 people over there, and somebody's been doing this and getting paid out of any monies that have been receipted, is that what's going on?
That's correct.
Okay, so now I'm beginning to understand what's happening
Yeah.
here. Wow.
John.
You go.
Oh, okay, Matthew, say something.
I'm being,
Now.
I'm being nice.
That's nice.
Oh, all right. That's
No,
a
I'm
departure.
not, I shouldn't have said it that way. I just have some questions. First thing, or statement first.
Okay.
I think we froze this position when we had budget constraints, and we have stuck with that. Okay. I just wanna make sure that that's where we were on that.
That's why it's coming to.
So that's,
Okay.
I just wanna, and we had to make some very difficult decisions on where we would spend money. And we made some.
We did.
And then some of our schools are suffering. Found out tonight that we have schools suffering because we took some funds away that in the past that they had. It's a small amount of money, but it was taken away. So we're going in and we're saying, hey, we're gonna go from a part-time position to a full-time position. Yet we're taking money out of the classrooms, it's been taken out, and we're not adding it back into the classrooms first. My goal is first to get it back into the classrooms, and then my questions that I was going in when we really started on this, and I wasn't expecting that it was good, all of this.
Okay.
But before I as a board member vote to make this a full-time position, one, I want to challenge that we said that we were going to allow teacher assistants to help them when we took them out of the classroom environment. And we said, well, that we wanted to give them an opportunity to make up money that was lost.
And we're doing that, right? We're doing that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, how many students have we had actually participate on our current teacher work days in those opportunities?
Combined locations or
Okay,
individual?
can I stop something right here?
Yes.
Missed it. We wanted to say
I
something.
just want to make a very clear point to your comment. This is an enterprise fund. All revenue
totally
and
different.
expenses
Classroom.
flow and come through that. So the parents who are paying for the services rendered is where the revenue is generated for the expenses generated. And Ms. Rath or Mr. Stevens can certainly verify, have there been any funds transfer from instructional supply allotments to support the enterprise fund program.
No, it's
So,
totally
so
different
there's
monies.
no, so it's totally the money generated is the money spent for this program.
That's right.
With the exception, certainly there may be, you know, like Mr. Stevens' time obviously is paid for out of a different funding source, so. I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify that it is truly an enterprise fund.
I accept that it's enterprise fund, but the goal when we started adding this for the TAs was to give an opportunity for them. And I'm just gonna throw it out, why don't we have one of the TAs do it so that we don't have a full-time position, so that we stay with what the board originally said that we wanted to do?
Okay,
Can I answer that?
yes.
Because they wouldn't be a TA anymore, because they wouldn't be at the school.
Why can't they do it at the school? We have directors, or
No.
managers at the
They'd have a
school.
different job.
What, then,
He's-
what,
they're-
Can
can't they take
can I
a full-time?
translate what I think you're trying to say is, I believe what he's saying is, this is a full-time position and they have to answer the phones and take applications,
And
answer
take
parents'
notes.
questions
Yeah.
while they can't be in the classroom helping the teacher.
Be a
I think is
teaching
what you
assistant.
were trying to say.
Yeah, right. So, Dr. H.
Yeah, another point, and maybe Ms. Rath, I think she may have been here when this was done. You actually, Seth, if I'm not mistaken, did a survey several years ago of surrounding school systems and school systems our size with respect to the school's community resource positions. And we were actually showing we had more people working in those positions than similar sized systems. So we how many working back then? 4 or 5?
That time we had 3.
We had 3. And have your numbers been going up or coming down with respect to students served?
We've trended up since the past 4 years. Student serves and programs offered.
Okay.
Summer camp.
And facility requests that are flowing through the program.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Oh, okay, so you're doing facility requests.
Yeah, we do that in that office too, don't we?
Okay,
I forgot.
all right.
Well,
I forgot
since
about that.
it was brought up, that these are enterprise funds, should enterprise funds be used for facility requests? I'm asking.
I'm not really, are we talking about the facility rentals?
Are you talking about to upfit or improve facilities?
You all said they were answering
So
use
part of
facility.
community relations is beyond just the
Enterprise.
enterprise fund, but
Right.
the operation. Community school relations is a bigger umbrella beyond just the enterprise fund.
Yeah,
so.
I agree it is, but it was stated very clearly that this was an enterprise fund thing.
Mhm.
So my question now,
Rhonda's gonna come get somebody straight. Thank you,
I'm
Rhonda.
just, I'm
You're here in case you have a question, thank you.
The position
thank
you
you.
were referring to
And
was a
Ron,
position
that's
for
what
the
you're supposed to do.
enterprise.
Let me say,
one
I
that-
appreciate that.
yeah, the one that I'm referring to is this, but that
Right.
it was just stated that this position could not be at the schools. And I can accept when they're answering phones and stuff like that. But part of what was highlighted was that they were going to timekeeping.
Mhm.
And items like that. And then it came out that they were also gonna be doing facility rentals.
Right.
I think I
Not
heard
this
that.
Not
person,
this
other
person.
individuals in that
Okay.
office.
Other people in that
Which
office.
is why he's requesting this position to handle the enterprise
The other
program.
people in this office that are doing those rentals, are they coming out of facility funds?
I don't know the funding source for that.
Rhonda is gonna speak to that.
Okay.
That's your 2, let me make sure, I won't say names, but those are the 2 individuals who've worked in the school community relations, your 2, office people. No, they are not supported out of facility use revenues. They are supported out of the, enterprise fund.
Is anybody supported out of the revenues?
The facility use revenues, those revenues those rates are built to include the cost of the custodial services.
But where do those monies go? To the school system general fund? Where do they go?
Those funds are kept in, the other restricted fund, Fund 8.
Here at the central office?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Sarah's and then Will.
Okay, So here's my question. So we looked at the Q1 enterprise fund report, and that is in the red. And last year, it ended in the black. That's awesome. What makes you confident that in the future quarters here, we're gonna be back in the black? Because I don't know, because some of that was because of increased salary and benefits and things like that. So my concern with this position is the money gonna exist in enterprise funding to foreseeably fund this position in the future?
Well, currently, can I give us a little context? We're already budgeting for a position that is already there, and we're paying on a temporary terming contract. We're paying twice for one, we're budgeting twice for one position. If you approve this, we take one of those away, and then we're only paying for one thing that exists.
So then the financial impact is actually not.
Please ask that question, because I totally didn't follow that.
So to give a little bit of clarity to your question, which is a good question, why in the first quarter would you be showing a difference between your revenue and your expenses? With enterprise funds, and Rhonda, correct me, but those funds are coming in on different cycles. We've just gone through the summer cycle where you have the most expensive time of the year to operate and run programs and have initiatives and have expenses. And so throughout the year, there will be times when that revenue will go up and down, but by the end of the year, this program, as they have done and reported back to the board, should be well balanced in funding itself, which is what the program's supposed to do. So Mr. Stevens, the question is, are you confident that if this is approved and with this, that your budget can sustain this position and that the revenues will be there for this position and to support the fund, not having financial impact deficits throughout the year?
Yes.
We'll have a question.
Yeah, so these are actuals, so I don't get I'm budgeting 2 and that's why it's negative. I mean, this says available revenue, so my question to you is, how's this covered, right? Because you've paid out people's salaries and so it's negative. What fund is actually covering it when we go negative?
Their fund balance.
So we take it out of our fund balance?
Not
Not ours, theirs.
Not ours,
Okay.
Enterprise.
It's totally out of the enterprise
Totally
fund.
different.
Okay, and I guess a couple of points that I'll make that Mr. Abilene was trying to make us feel better about was that over the summer, last year, we had lots of revenues, so like 81K, and the expenditures were less, 72K, but when you look at here, it was actually down, right? So 75K and 66K for the summer. So actually we brought in less and we had less expenses. But I personally don't feel comfortable approving a position when we're in a negative state. I mean, I would rather see a black state before we go into approving a position given it's negative.
Wait a
It just
minute.
doesn't feel right.
No, didn't we, but we approved the budget with the money in there already, so the money is already there. Is that what I heard, Rhonda?
The budget does include the funds for this
For that position, so it is there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
For the
so
budget.
that's what, and that's what I heard, and I've also heard that, and I'll call you Mr. Roberts, I haven't said anything, I was just trying to grasp it myself. And I think the only reason I do sort of understand it is because I've been here a while with Steve, and we've been hearing this enterprise and all this talk. So, that enterprise money, that was approved when the budget was approved, but we didn't fill it because it was frozen, so it was, somebody was working on it. A woman has been doing it on a temporary terminating contract means. And what concerns me is, as a woman, women always seem to get the short end of the stick, and men just keep on working, getting their benefits. And this woman here is gonna, it sounds like, I want her to have a job with benefits, because you got your job with benefits, and and she's been doing it, and the money was approved by the other board, not this board. This board didn't do it, the other board approved it.
So I'd like to
Froze it,
respond,
the board
hold on.
froze it also.
I would like to
Yeah,
respond
yeah.
to that. The budget and the actuals are negative, whether they budgeted or not, it is negative. So if
Yeah.
we actually approved it,
You did.
it would be more negative. So my point is, it's currently negative whether we budgeted or not. We've spent more than we've actually gotten in. And my only point is, I'm not against fulfilling it, But I don't know why we would fulfill it until it goes into the plus, is what I was getting at.
Sierra, go
And so
ahead.
I wanna know, is that accurate? And if it is, you're confident that it'll go into the black, and I just wanna know, like, sort of on what basis, you know? Cause I'm comfortable, I understand that the money flows in differently, and it does not exactly look like last year, but that's my question, is like, what makes you confident that it's gonna change direction in future quarters?
Wanna take two-part? Let me go first?
Yeah.
All right. So revenues, we do have times where it waxes and wanes, red and black. In the history, I guess as, stocks folks may say, you can't guarantee anything in the future. We could have a catastrophe that closes us down for the next couple months. This is true. It could happen. We've had school systems that just opened up 2 weeks ago from hurricanes. Now, if I look at where I have wait lists, and I look at where I have strong parent support and participation for our programs, I'm confident it will continue. I'm confident it will continue because this year we outlaid a little bit more money to front load our program to get things like Spheros and iPads and more computers and more tech and more programmatic things. You also heard during the SIP presentation from a particular middle school principal that after schools help provide funds to include more staff for direct tutoring or intervention services.
Two
Yes.
questions, or
Okay.
one follow-up.
Two questions.
One comment.
Okay.
Will, you're hitting it exactly right. We're running in the black, and then when you look at last year, our revenues were 81,000 for August, that's our summertime. This year, they were at 75, but our expenditures went down, and we showed that. So the summer cash flow program isn't showing for August. Two questions. Wait list. How does this position help eliminate our wait list?
I don't know if that premise, they match.
You're saying, if I understood correctly, when you were asked, what
Okay.
gives you reason to believe that you're gonna go back into the black?
Popularity program.
Okay, how does this position
I'm just gonna-
pull more students into either the elementary schools that you have a wait list of, or the middle schools that we're doing more to work with those middle schools? How does this position help to pull more students into these programs? What's this gonna do about getting rid of the wait list?
So what hopefully it will do is give board member confidence in their fiduciary capacity to handle payments more timely and efficiently, and to be able to process DSS claims, which will then in turn allow us to continue service to our students.
Let me ask it again. You said you had a wait list.
It's some schools, not
At
all.
some schools.
Eflin, we need to do some work over there.
I don't even have a kid at Eflin, so I don't know if we have a wait list there or not. Which school do you have a wait list at?
HES.
Okay, at Hillsborough Elementary, you have a wait list for that program. 10 students?
I'm not sure the number.
10 students, let's say it's 10. And I accept that it's not. By adding this position, how many of those students are gonna get off that wait list? If we add this position, how many students are gonna get off that wait list? Then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna actually ask the question.
I know.
Your comment was that more board confidence, fiduciary about paying and everything. We're paying everybody on time, so this isn't gonna address that. If I understood what you were saying, and I didn't, I'm gonna go right ahead and tell you that I didn't understand that last statement at all. I'll just go ahead and say it. But I do wanna know, adding this position out of those theoretical 10 students at Hillsborough Elementary, because they're your customers, and they're gonna be the ones that's gonna help bring in more revenue. This position, how many of those students would you expect to come off the wait list?
Is your question premised on the fact that the wait list is due to something other than our license capacity? Because we're at capacity.
So this position will not do anything to reduce the wait list, because you're at capacity.
Can I say, excuse me, Steve, we're kind of going in circles.
Yeah,
Steve,
I just had a
Steve,
question. I think what we need is some additional information that we can get at our next meeting to be able to better digest this. And may I suggest, we need some numbers. We need financial numbers, we need student numbers, that kind of information. we need to look at a little historical narrative on what the board did say. We did say we were gonna freeze things, but I'm gonna tell you something, Brenda and you and I were at a meeting at the convocation when a new person arrived, and we didn't know that that position had been filled.
Right.
Okay?
That's true. Well,
Which
this
mean-
position was not present.
Well, I understand that, but let's
just
just get some clarification here with the programs at each school, what's involved, and let's move on. And I'd like to see that sheet you did a couple of years ago, because if I'm not mistaken, I thought the optimum number of people we had in school community relations should have been 3, and that's where we're functioning at 3.
So
Right.
the
So I'm
vehicle would be,
Is it?
I'm sorry.
No, well, yeah.
There's someone already doing this job.
Yeah, unbeknownst to us.
Well, look, I'm gonna, this was an action item. I'm gonna call for a vote, and then when with your unreadiness, please state what you need for school community relations to bring. All in favor of approving this, let it be known by the sign of aye.
So we'd need a motion, we still gotta operate by.
Yeah,
motion.
well, so I was gonna ask, didn't I say, can I get a motion, could we
Okay.
do that? I think that's what I said. And so when we vote it down, we can be clear, cause we need to move on, cause it's kinda going in circles a little bit.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, it was
I
sort of
agree.
going in circles, and I'm sorry, I cut you off, Hillary.
Oh no, it's okay. That's basically all I have to say.
All right, well, Hillary said there's somebody doing the job, yes, and so it sounds like this woman will continue to do the job without
Either way.
benefits, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
and it's halted by men, of course.
May I just
All right.
say one thing before you
Please do.
Please do.
continue? I think what Seth was trying to say that I just want to reiterate is that the revenues are lagging behind the expenditures because of the payments from the Department of Social Services.
Well, I heard him
So
say it.
That, just to be clear, we will have
say
the
that.
expenditures and we will pay the individuals to perform the job, but some of those revenues that we receive, from the Department of Social Services are lagging a month behind.
Right.
So it's not a
This would
true,
help you.
yes, it's not a true, wash of revenues versus expenditures in this first quarter. That's
Yeah,
all
I
I'm
heard,
gonna tag.
well, he had said that, and that's when Mr. Roberts said he wasn't sure of what he said. But the county is kinda slow about paying.
Brenda,
Got it.
I wanna
So-
make sure what you're asking for us to do, that when we're voting, you want us to say why, what we
Or-
need additionally.
Or just please give them instruction, clear, cause I'm not quite clear.
I'll go ahead and address
Steve-
the
Oh, go
one
ahead.
the instruction that I would like to actually see participation at each of the schools. I'd like to see participation.
You're welcome to come.
Now,
No,
I wanna know-
numbers.
Oh.
See,
Financial numbers, number of students
right.
participating. Does that school have a wait list? Because if they have a wait list, there's an opportunity to grow it there. If they do have a wait list, there's an opportunity to grow it. If they don't have a wait
Yes.
list, we have a big opportunity to grow it, because there may be a way of addressing your limits on those. So I just wanna know a breakdown of participation at school by the 2 different types, work holidays or teacher work days and our current programs. The next one is dealing with, Rhonda, what you were saying. I wanna see that, I keep hearing that revenues are slow from the state. I wanna know how they're different this year than they were last year.
The state of the county.
State or county,
The
whoever
DSS
it
is
is.
This case is the county, it's not the state.
Not the state,
It's
he
the
said
county.
DSS.
DSS, okay. But if they're slower this year, we need to hear that so that county commissioners can start.
Right.
seeing.
We got
And
it.
I'd like to suggest that, the superintendent Wirt talk to Mr., and I'm sure somebody will record this, talk to Mr. Roberts so that he can get clarity on this. Because he has a lot of questions, and that's good, and they'll get answered by the superintendent. He's taken note of that. Yes, sir,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think in terms of procedurally where we are, there's been some talk about maybe putting this off and getting some additional information. So that would be a motion to table or to defer consideration So that's one option the board can take, or the board can actually take action on the action item tonight. And so that's kind of where you are procedurally.
I move we table this action till
Second.
the next meeting.
All in favor of that?
All right,
All opposed? Nay?
well, let's raise hands so we can see.
No, I think, well, the women said nay, the men wanna
No,
keep the.
I
I'm
wish
sorry,
we would
I'm
keep-
sorry, I'm sorry,
Yeah, I
I'm
think we
sorry,
should
let's
keep
raise
this
hands,
gender
let's raise
neutral,
hands.
this male, female thing.
We'll raise hands, all
Let's
in
just-
favor,
Okay.
tabling it.
The table.
And I wanna make an observation
right.
right there. Now,
All right.
it's not just the men.
Can you please not put
All
your
right.
hand in my face?
All right.
Yeah, Sarah, I think that you raised your hand to table.
I didn't.
Yes, she did, she
Okay.
did, she
Well,
did, she
before-
raised her hand
Before
to
the
table
chair
it.
said it, the women voted
She
for it.
raised her hand to table
Best
it.
show and tell.
It's two. Two, all right.
So
So
Mr.
that
President,
item
procedure,
Five.
does this
I
affect
think
this
it was
individual?
five,
The
I think it was, you said four and
Let's
two?
talk-
No,
let's table.
5 and
Okay,
2,
so it doesn't finish.
5 and 2.
Table.
Well,
Table.
you have that privilege, Sarah, if that's what you'd like to do.
Right now?
Well, right now, when would you do it?
Oh, I guess so. Well, you had suggested
No,
maybe
go on.
people,
No.
people tabled it to
Well,
say
we
what would be
didn't,
helpful,
yeah,
or-
we didn't have that motion, so Sarah said she had something she'd like to share.
Oh, it's just that, I think the thing that I would be interested in seeing is understanding over a year how the revenue changes, so if there's a big sort of bulk up that we're expecting in quarters 2, 3, 4, just sort of being able to understand why we're in the red now, but adding the position, there's just a little bit more of that financial that we
Like maybe
Not-
like a
not right.
3-year look back, maybe?
I'm sorry.
3-year look back, cyclical, 3, 4
I
year.
don't want
That
to
would be good.
do a big thing,
Well-
but, I'm assuming that we have some sort of quarterly.
Wait a minute, you said yes and you said no. I'm meaning 2 years, 3 years?
Couple of years, couple of
Okay.
years. I just need to understand the general flow of a year. So if it's consistent every year, that the flow looks like this, then 1 year would be fine. I mean, I
And
just.
there was
wanna-
another question asked, is this common for DSS to be slow, or do they usually pay on time?
About a year and a half
They
ago,
don't-
DSS changed the funding structure. So it used to be a direct stream revenue, now it's a block grant revenue with look-back periods based on children's attendance in school over the previous year.
Well, see, Seth, this is important for us to know. This
I'm glad you
is
asked the
important,
question.
yeah, it's important narrative stuff, because they're changing the rules, and it may require the superintendent to make a phone call to the county manager. And bring it up in collaboration. You guys are there in
The state
collaboration.
promulgated it to the county.
Yeah, but it's having an adverse effect on our operations here, and they need to know
Make the
this.
state.
Yeah.
All right, do you have, we have any more? Yeah, go
The
ahead.
only other one I'd like to add is just to understand, once this position's added, how it affects the expenditures, right, going forward, and whatever you bring back.
Okay.
You don't, I don't need to know it now, but just like, hey, it's gonna be plus this, or, just so we can understand it. So what I would expect is when you're doing that, you would show like, you're negative here, but here's this payment, now it's positive, just a projection based on what y'all are seeing, because that's what we're struggling with, is how that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I think I'll take the comments received here this evening. We will get those back to the board. If there's comments that have been missing or were not included, we'll ask for clarification to make sure we captured all the requests here this evening. So just wanted to point out there'll be additional opportunity to continue to provide requests for clarification.
well, thank you all for all of your questions and all of your participation. And with all of that said, we can say we're not even asking for a motion to extend. Because we've done that the last few times. So if I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Wonderful. We got a motion to, it is 9:00. This is great. I can go home.
Yeah, no, I'll wait till you bring it back. You see what I mean?
Yeah, just disgustingly.